Welcome everybody back to the Focus to Win podcast. Lee, what's going on, man? Long time to see.
Always a pleasure to see you, buddy.
Great. So we're going to focus on the 3 mistakes that we made in our sales career. Hopefully this can bring a lot of value to young salespeople or even the experienced ones.
Yeah, learning lessons, right?
Absolutely. So
Learn from
let's
failures.
start with you, Lee. You have a lot more wisdom. You've been through a lot more than I have in this industry. So tell me more about that first mistake that you made.
I just think of so many times of consistency comes into play. It doesn't matter when I look back on life of, consistency and a diet, consistency and getting up at the same time. Like I was on a training thing last night and they were talking about sleep. And it was like, all right, how do you get better sleep? Right. Consistency, right? Going to bed the same time every night. But how often does that happen? It depends. Mine's gotten much more consistent because I'm learning as I get older and grayer and stuff like that. But when it comes to sales, I just think of so many times of you get hot and heavy and then you slow down and so many real estate wise, it was like the roller coaster of sales because you would prospect. All of a sudden you get a lot of sales and then you're following up, getting the deal done, not following up with new clients.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the money goes down because you weren't doing all the prospecting you need. And I see it over and over, especially within the team. I see when the ones are not consistent with their behaviors. And I would say, I know I made my fair share of mistakes in the beginning. And I would tell you, if you're a young person in sales, consistency is going to be your friend on everything you do.
Yeah.
Your eating habits, your drinking habits, your going to sleep pattern, it's consistency and all of those things, right? It's like you learn these lessons and you really learn them when you don't have any money coming in the door. Like, holy crap. I think of back, when I got into real estate and my wife's, she worked from home taking care of the kids, but we only had single income. And if I wasn't selling anything, there was no money coming in the door.
You had no choice.
So you learn to be much more consistent than anything else. But I would say consistency and persistency goes along with that because you have to be persistent, or you have to have enough pain behind you that's going, coming at you of, I think, you as a younger person of, hey, do you have a house that you're buying, an apartment? Where are your expenses? Because you have enough greater pain. Now all of a sudden you have that need. You have a need, right?
Right.
It isn't a want. I don't want to make money. I need to make money.
Yeah.
I need to take care of my family. And then you learn how important consistency is.
That's a great point. My beginning of my sales career was in real estate, which in my opinion, I think it's the hardest sales industry to be in. It's a very long sales and daunting sales process. And you have to be consistent. Mm-hmm. If you really want to get into an industry that is reliant on the 1099 lifestyle, entrepreneurial lifestyle, it is very rewarding, but it does require that consistency in the beginning. As time goes on, a lot of the business starts to come to you a little bit, but it's still there's always that edge that you have to have and what's next, the next deal, the next month. And I learned that very early as well. And that's a very good point. I had the big moment of making way more than people my age in the beginning. But then there was also months there was zero.
Yep.
And that's a tough pill to swallow. And you kind of realize that when your bank account is running low. But it forces you, like you said, to get in there.
Yeah, consistency is just key. I would say one of the major keys to life. And I talk to people all the time and I see over and over when there's problems, usually lack of consistency more than anything else. Mm-hmm. Whether it's like, hey, I got to make my calls today. I have to go eat my prepared meals that I prepared over the weekend or whatever it may be, or what is it you're consistently doing? Because you can't say I'm going to eat great one day a week and then expect to lose weight, because most people, it's not gaining weight, it's losing weight. That's the masses.
I think the biggest faulty with a lot of people, especially with dieting or even in real estate, is I found that the weekends is the best time to reach out to people. And the weekends for nutrition purposes is where people fail. But then also in real estate, the weekends is where people don't prospect and they stop making the dials. But that's the best time to get a hold of people. So it's ironic that, people let go of that consistent drive that they put so many hours into during the weekdays, but it shouldn't stop always at the weekend. I mean, I get it, the rest and taking care of your bodies, but that's where a lot of the growth is, I think. And
100%.
How you can take that consistency and carry that momentum into the next one.
So you have to figure a way to put pain in your life.
Yeah.
Meaning, all right, when you have the natural pain, it's easier because your back's against the wall. You have to do these things. You have to make the money. You don't have a choice. And you figure out when consistency starts making you win. You're like, maybe I'll just do more of this.
Right.
But when you don't have the pain, you have to implement pain somehow. Like, all right, drain your savings down to very little that you can see on a regular basis, and put all of it into account that you only check every once in a while, just make sure nobody hijacked it.
Absolutely.
But when you do that, all of a sudden you're living on less money too, and that comes into like my number 2 mistake,
Yep.
which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But that way you're not looking at that money and you're feeling like, oh, I don't have enough to get by.
Right.
Okay, great. We'll live with that pain.
Yeah.
Or the other option is people go get themselves deep in debt.
Yeah.
They buy a big house, they buy a new car, they buy the things,
the
and
IRS.
now they have the freaking pain.
April's coming up, IRS knocking
Right.
at your door, and
Exactly.
here comes a bill. You got to have that mindset. So that's a good point. We'll touch a little more on that in a second.
So what was your number 1?
My number 1 was very early in my sales career. It was walking into our office, and I'm 20 years old, and I'm trying to convince 40-year-old people how to buy a house when I've never bought a house myself. How did I do that in the beginning? And quite honestly, I didn't even know how. But I struggled immensely, and I felt like I was doing all the right things, and I was saying the right things, but you always mentioned tonality and assertiveness and those type of things. And it all came down to one mistake that I didn't have or I didn't acquire right away, and it was confidence. So a story that I can give on this specific topic was when I first got in the business, it was one of my first clients. I was showing them houses, and I knew what to say, but I didn't say it in a manner that I knew what I was talking about. And they see a young, fresh out of college. It was obvious. I had on a suit that didn't fit me, and they stopped working with me. They kind of ghosted me. So, but what I realized was that it wasn't necessarily what I was saying; it was how I was saying it. And we went to a seminar to see Bill Pipes, John Sheplack. It was a big sales mastering. It was awesome. It was in Atlanta, and at that conference, Bill stood up there and we worked on script. But the one thing he emphasized, and I always remember, he said, certainty creates influence. People do not follow or listen to people that aren't certain about what they're talking about. So I looked at that, and I had that written down in big bold print, underlined twice, and every script that we worked on or practiced on from then on out, or any client that I spoke to over the phone, or any deal I was negotiating with the listing agent, I had certainty in my tone. So if I learned one thing from that whole journey, I would say it was probably a 4-month period where I had to figure it all out, was confidence.
Yeah.
Be certain with what you're talking about. Have that really demanding the tone of saying, like, I know this is the right thing for
There's
you.
more emotion in it. So I
Yes.
think of with Jim Rohn, he used to say, words are the pin. He said, now if you take that pin and put it to a wrought iron, like you can't hurt much with a pin,
Right.
but you strap it to a wrought iron post, which is your emotion, and now you can really hurt somebody with it,
Yes.
or make them feel it. Like not so much hurting them, but you could feel that when that emotion's behind it, and that emotion is that, it's like, hey, now it's your confidence level is coming through, and you're feeling what they're saying, and you're feeling what they feel, what you need to feel. What they need to feel from you.
Correct.
Because first of all, number one, you care. You're not just trying to sell them something. And then all your confidence behind of like, hey, these are the steps. I know these are the steps. I've heard them over and over. I've seen it in all the other processes. Now I have more confidence. And then once you do it once and you do it again, you do it again, and you do it again, now all of a sudden repetition builds confidence even greater.
Correct. And that's a very good point. When I first worked with my first few clients, it felt like forever to get the first deal. And it was because I didn't have that confidence. But it's amazing when you described it to me, you said that once you get the first one, they do flow together. And they really do. And part of that is strictly the confidence. Once you get through that first transaction, a lot of the transactions have their own nuances, but the whole process remains the same, right? And it's like a routine.
I remember you were frustrated there for a while because things weren't coming together. And I was like, just stay at it over and over, repetition. And eventually it's going to start clicking together. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, got one offer accepted. Great. Next day, hey, I got another offer accepted. Hey, I got another offer accepted. And by the end of the week, you had 6 offers accepted.
Yep.
So I was like, but you go through a dry spell. But again, you just have to stay at it more than anything else. And so many times people are not staying consistent with the activities that will produce.
Correct.
But you also have small course corrections that you're tweaking to make sure the words you're using are correct. Right. Are they feeling it the way they need to feel it? Are they hearing it? Let me go back and play that in my head, playing a tape. Sometimes like let me hear what that sounds like. Or, if there's any of it that's recorded that, hey, some like Zillow calls are recorded and so forth, you can go back and easily listen to them and so forth. So when you listen to that, you're like, oh shit, this is what I said. Because sometimes it's not always what you said, it's how you said it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the small words that you use. We were role playing the other day in the office, and Brendan, he kept saying, like, he was going through and he's like, okay, got it. And then you get to the next thing, he's like, got it. And I was like, that got it kind of cuts things off. And like, got it, like,
yeah,
it was close. And I said, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about the conversation, but like every time it was closing off, every time you said got it, I was like, I wouldn't use that. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting when we get through, because it's, again, what we're saying, how we're saying it, tonality, inflection, mirror and matching, making sure we're doing all these things. And as you get better, and like I just mentioned a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, but because I'm so used, right, because we get so used to doing it, right? I've been in sales since I was 8 years old. I'm 50 years old now. I got 42 years in sales. It's like you start learning a lot because you're around it all the time. Some of it's going to come more natural, and there's no natural born salesperson. Like I think I've heard that so many times. Like, I didn't come out of the womb selling, freaking be able to sell stuff, right? But I could, you're around it, you hear it, you're knowing what to say, you're paying attention to people's reaction, you're paying attention to body language. How are they closing themselves off? Are they closing themselves off? What are you paying attention to what you're saying? Because otherwise, that again is confidence, right? Me and you start talking, and I'm like closing you off, turning my shoulder, closing my.
That's a big thing. The nonverbal. I don't know who was mentioning it. I was listening to a conference, but the guy mentioned if they're shifting their body weight, well, the nonverbal cues will give you exactly that. And I felt like that was a good example. Well, when I did first start in the business, I recognized a lot of people's body language. That kind of drew away from my confidence. I started to become less confident in what I was saying because I noticed they weren't listening to me.
Yeah.
And when I would speak with a certain tone and I started to be very assertive on the back end of my sentences, all of a sudden they stopped and they listened, or I would pause and I would see the reaction. Pause is a big one
that people don't pay attention
to. So those confident types of body language and those things really helped me tremendously. And if I were to go back to 20-year-old Austin, who just started as a rookie, I would tell him exactly those things. I'm like, even though you don't feel that way, do it. And as you do those things, they'll listen more. Yeah. So that's mine. So let's move on. Let's go to your second one. I know you were touching on a little bit earlier. So,
yep. So as you're riding the roller coaster sometimes and you're making money, you're self-employed. So depending on what type of sales you're in, sometimes you are 1099, some are W-2.
Most of them are 1099.
Most of them are going to be 1099. But are you saving money for your taxes? Because otherwise, you had said it, April comes the tax man. Are you saving it? Otherwise, all of a sudden, you owe $75,000 in taxes or $50,000 in taxes. You're like, holy crap. and that's why it's so important it's always to live on the less and put so much away. Because that was a big mistake. I probably had IRS chasing me for 3 years because I was always behind that year. And this was like early on in my industry. I'm like, holy shit, when am I going to finally get out of this? When Josh started working, I was like, all right, yeah, you're 1099, but I'm putting you on like, you're coming up with a payment plan of like, put 40% of this in savings. It's going to be too much, but hopefully now you're going to put that away. You're not going to see it. You're not going to miss it because this is what you're going to live on. Because really that's what you would have netted if you worked for somebody anyway, and all your taxes were pulled out of it. So make sure you're living on less, because that was a big one. That was like, that's a hell of a feeling when you're getting phone calls from IRS.
Yeah.
Not fun.
And they put it in bold print for you. For those of you that don't have 1099s yet and all that, they'll say that we can take away all your assets if you don't make these payments to us.
And I would say even to the point where even if you said 50%, most cases we don't save enough, first of all. And then the other thing, you don't save for taxes. So if you lived on like, hey, I'm a 1099 employee, I have a $5,000 commission coming in. All right, I'm keeping $2,500, I'm putting $2,500 away. That way it's going on to savings. It's going into account that I'm not checking on a regular basis again, because it's not, if you have both of them, you log in your account, you see both of them, like, okay, I got this.
Right.
Like, no, you can't think that way.
Correct.
You got to, what you don't see, and living on less. When you live on less, now all of a sudden you're saving more. Now all of a sudden when Murphy shows up, because Murphy's Law, something's going to happen. Or you need money, opportunity comes up to buy something, like, oh, this is great opportunity to buy this investment property. I have the funds to be able to go buy it. But if you don't save, you're never going to have the funds to buy it.
Yeah, that's a common theme in every veteran business owner. They always say, always save your money. You can never have enough reserves set aside for something. It is a horrifying feeling. Knock on wood. I haven't had my moments of like being behind on taxes yet or anything. Hopefully I don't ever experience that. But they all say the same thing because they've been through that. And that is super important for young real estate agents, life insurance agents, mortgage. It doesn't matter. Everybody wants to go on vacations and do all those things. And
well, they want to reward themselves because they've been working. I've been working so hard.
Right.
I'm like, working
and,
so
and
hard.
If you're doing the consistencies, the consistent actions that we talked about, that's one thing. And you're making a significant amount of money, that's one thing. But like you said, Murphy's Law always finds its way. I've had my moments. You've had your moments. And that is always very important. So that is a very good point. Very good point.
And then what would your number 2 be?
Yeah, this is something that I'm still learning, and I actually recently ran into a situation in my sales career with following up with next steps. So anytime that an individual or client that you're talking to, customer, does not matter, always follow up a phone call or a meeting or face-to-face with next step actions. That is something that I'm still learning. It's something that I never understood in the beginning until I started to have a client base of people, and I would be calling them and be like, I don't even know why I'm calling them sometimes. Yeah. And you're following up and doing the necessary steps, but there's not a process that you're guiding the client or customer down the pipeline to. And I learned it this past week in a negotiation where I could have done a better job with dealing with the negotiation, and after speaking to the agent on the other side to say, this is the next thing that you're going to be expecting of me. And on the other side of this perspective, it's when you talk to a client, and for instance, let's use real estate just for the sake of, that's the industry we're in. If a client that you're talking to, you just met them for a buyer strategy session, a consultation, and you walk them through the next steps of getting the mortgage approval and all those things. There should be clear cut, make it 1 to 3 steps on what needs to be done before that next meeting happens, and schedule an exact date and time that it's going to be executed. That is something that I need to be better at to this day, and that's something that I learned even early often, but it's something that's like a weakness of mine.
Closing the loop.
Yeah.
So I think that's so many cases like that when you're negotiating through things. So you're talking to your client, you get all the information. Now you got to call the agent. Then you get that information. Now you got to go back to the client. The client's got to think about it. You got to worry about because sometimes it gets stuck back there, and then they don't give you an answer.
Right.
And then now it's like an hour later. All right, well, I still have to call this agent because the agent's waiting for me, like a text. Hey, just want to let you know I'm still waiting to hear back from my client. I'll let you know in the next hour. Right. Another hour goes by, you got to be calling your client again, especially in today's market. Is like, it's competitive out there.
Right.
Hey, do you want this or not? If not, no big deal. I'll let her know we're going to pass. Hey, I just want to let you know we're going to pass. Or, hey, no, we're going to up our offer, blah, blah. Again, it's closing the loop.
There's gray area. Right. There's too much gray and cloudiness in the situation. So I would say a very effective and a very high producer, sales professional, what they do very well is they create a very detailed but very simplified process that when you are with a client, and let's say real estate, if you are going to get a listing and you sit in front of them, if you do not get that listing paperwork signed, there needs to be something that is scheduled after that is action oriented, so they know that you're in the back of their mind. Steps? And those are the next step plans that I have learned, and I'm still learning going through as a sales professional. And it has helped me when I do those things. Yep. It only has
it helps everybody, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just help you because it's setting expectations of what are we expecting to happen next? Because otherwise, vagueness, they're like, all right, well, I don't know what to do. We need to find somebody else.
Yeah. And if you deal with a high net worth individual, their time is very valuable. $1 per hour, that's how they look at it. So if you give them a call and there's no process that they're leaving with or something they're getting out of it, they're going to be pretty pissed off. Yeah. And if you want to work with luxury clients like that, more importantly, that needs to be emphasized. So that was my mistake, is to lead with a process. When you're done leaving the client, be clear and concise about next steps. Yeah. So that's my...
And that kind of leads into mine.
Yeah. So go ahead. What's the third one?
So my third one is follow up. Yep. And fortune's in the follow up. Yeah. So many cases like, all right, I'm going to do this. all right, I'm going to make my calls. I'm going to follow up with you. I just think of clients that I have one that's on my calendar for tomorrow. I met with them in November. I think I originally talked to them in June, but they're building a new house out of state. So it's like, all right, I've got to consistently just check-ins. So that's my next, like when we get done talking, hey, okay, great. If you need anything in between, if not, I'm going to check in with you on the 22nd of February. Hey, just want to check in. They're a month out still. Okay, great. We're going to check in about beginning of March, 2 weeks. Just checking in. I'll call you on March 3rd. Probably around noontime. Does that work for you? Great. You're setting that follow-ups, or you have a lead that hasn't been followed up on a while. That's, again, fortunes in the follow-up. You don't know when people are ready. We think we buy something when we're ready. When you're buying a big purchase, it's when they are ready. Like there's pain in their life. They're ready to move forward. Or like we were talking about this, the Echo Go, it's like, all right, this was Gary Brecka watching his, Ultimate Human podcast. And he was just talking about, and I've probably seen it like 5 times, right? And it was follow up because it was every time I was seeing him, he had the water bottle with him. And he was talking about the hydrogen water and so forth. But again, that was a follow up.
The recognition
with him.
came through a consistent pattern of hearing. Yeah.
So, but I think with salespeople, a lot of cases they're not doing enough follow up, or are they doing enough social media impact? What are they doing to make them look like, hey, I'm confident. I know what the market is. I know today in Hartford County, there was 221 homes on the market that are active. We had another 27 that are coming soon. Like this is what's going on in the market. We have very low inventory. Like when you can talk facts front and let people know what's going on, now they're like, all right, you are the expert. People want to deal with somebody that's confident, that's an expert in the field, knows what the heck's going on in the market, and gives you guidance, setting expectations, closing loops.
Right.
Hey, you said, like, we love this property. You said you had this question about this. I'm going to get you the answer by 2:00 today. Does that work for you? Great. If I get it sooner, I'll call you. But if not, I'll call you by 2:00 and tell you I don't have the answer yet. I'm still working on it, but I will follow up by 2:00.
Yeah. There's another layer to what you just said. It was follow-up, but effective follow-up. Like, don't call. This is a mistake that I even made. So I would call people, and I would just repeat what the former conversation we had was, a month ago. How's everything going on? How's the family? Like, give them something that they can leave that with and say there was value in that conversation. Yeah. And that's a great point. The follow-up it's very detailed. There's so many routes you can go with that, whether it be like a note, a handwritten note, wishing them a happy birthday. That's something that you do very well. Like you recognize those things, and you can definitely tell that you've conditioned yourself to have that and wired into you as a sales professional.
That and video. I mean, video these days goes so much farther, and especially if you can record a 20-second video, just thinking of them, say something meaningful for them. Why not just like, hey, happy birthday. Hey man, I was thinking of you today out on a golf course.
And you're referencing like sending a text of a video of yourself.
Correct. Yeah. Like it could be a video happy birthday. It could be, hey, I was driving actually through your neighborhood. I left you a voice, or I tried calling you. I got your voicemail. Just figured I'd send you a video text. Great to, I look forward to catching up with you soon. Just thinking of you. Hope your kids are doing well, and tell your wife, Susan, I said hello.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know she do that every birthday.
Yeah.
But that is very impactful, and that's effective follow up. And even though you're not, and part of that is don't be so focused on the transaction in itself. Like you're doing it in a very natural way.
I would say one of the things I heard recently that I thought was really good, a lead is not a lead to a sale. A lead is for, especially real estate, because it's a bigger purchase, a car purchase, something that's bigger that you're selling, mattresses, all those type things. A lead is a lead to a relationship. The relationship, once you build a relationship, now you're leading to a sale. Yes. You're not going like, this is a lead to a sale, right? Mm-hmm. I'm buying a more inexpensive type thing. It's not that I'm buying a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home. Right. That's a lead to a relationship. So when you're selling bigger ticket items, you need to think of build a relationship. Now I have a relationship. The relationship now will lead to a sale, but it starts as a lead to a relationship.
Yeah, Ryan Serhant says it. People buy from friends.
Yeah, likability.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you can make a business of being a transactional salesperson, but
not fun.
You're going to work so much harder in your career because the people that you work with, if they don't hear from you and you're not top of mind and they don't feel like I'm a friend, like that transaction happened, but I'm a friend with them, they're not coming back.
Right.
I mean, if they do, they're very good people. But that's a very good emphasis on the follow up, is that you are building a connection. Number one, the priority is taking care of your people. Once you take care of those people and they recognize that, the referrals come in. And the referrals come in, then the business will start to run itself in a more fluid, natural way, rather than you're constantly trying to find new people because you probably pissed someone off because you're focused on the transaction. You didn't represent their best interest. Yeah. They felt that you were in it just for the commission check.
Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care.
Damn, that was really good. That was fantastic.
That's I've heard it over and over through the years. I don't know where I heard it first from, but nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. And that is such a big thing where somebody's so involved in selling and it's transactional. Like, they can feel it. They feel like you have commission breath.
Yeah.
Like, if you have commission breath, most people are fighting it off. They don't want anything to do with it. Like you talked about the first sale, they're like, they could feel you're trying to sell them something. People want to buy, but they don't want to be sold to.
Yeah.
So you have to you have to build the relationship. Now, when you have a relationship, make sure you're doing the things that need to be done, close the loops, do your follow-ups, check in, see how they're doing. And then when you check in, and it is like part of the conversation is, hey, how are you today? I know you were sick last week. Hey, just seeing how things are going. How are you feeling? And then go into what else you're calling for.
Yes.
Hey, that's new listing just came on the market. I know you've been like really looking for something like this. Hey, I just want to make sure you've seen it. No pressure. I wanted to see it. Hopefully you're doing well. And here's the property. Let me know if you have any interest in it.
Yeah, and people recognize that. I'm a very straightforward person in terms of, like, I want to get to the business right away.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake that I made definitely earlier, is that when I would call somebody, maybe it was a few days later or something, I recognized it later naturally. I was like, what did I do well in that conversation with that individual or that client or the customer or whatever it is? And it really came down to, did I really make them feel like they're worthy? Like, do they leave that feeling, man, like that conversation with Austin was rejuvenating. It made me feel really good. I got to talk about what's going on in my life. And when you're doing that, like, that's the biggest open arms type of trust. And if they can trust you with their personal stuff, they're going to trust you with any transaction that you ever work with.
Much less their family, their friends, their aunts.
And it makes the transaction smoother because you've walked them through this whole process in a very opening, nurturing way. And they're going to trust you when it's crunch time. Yeah. So
this comes up into your third mistake.
Yeah. Which is, sometimes you get the great combos and sometimes you get the bad ones. My third mistake in the sales is not having the uncomfortable conversation. It's never easy when you have to give bad news to a client. It's never easy to give them the unfortunate reality of the sale that is going to transpire. Whether it be a real estate agent and that gets a bad inspection, and you got to run them through exactly that this deal is
appraisal.
Yeah, you're dealing with issues within a long-term transaction, or even it could be a direct business-to-consumer transaction in retail, where the price that they are looking for is unrealistic, which really transfers to anything else. But that uncomfortable conversation of setting that expectation forward can prevent a lot of issues on the back end. And one of the things I didn't do, and I remember a story of working with a young woman. She was a single mother buying her first home. I explained to her the process of buying real estate and a great plan, and everything looks so beautiful on paper. But the problem was, we ran into a problem on inspection day, and those of you that have gotten an inspection, no matter how beautiful and how well the house is built, the inspection report's gonna pick it apart if it's a good inspection, right? So people usually freak out when they see small things, chip drywall or something ridiculous. And something came up like that, and she freaked out. And because I didn't set that uncomfortable expectation of, hey, this inspection, I just want to let you know, will scare you a bit, the deal fell through. And it was one of the deals that I was looking back and I'm like, she would have much rather have that house than the one she found. And she was happy either way, but she could have definitely saved a lot of headache with finding another house if I were to set that expectation for
ahead of time.
And doing those things and having those uncomfortable conversations can prevent a lot of things on the back end of the transaction. And if you haven't experienced that yet, and you haven't, you eventually will. I think everybody has gone through that.
You had mentioned earlier strategy session, right? Strategy session is all about setting expectations on what's going on in the market. no matter what the market is, what is going on in today's market, because today's market may be different. Like November and December was a way better market to buy than it is today.
Right.
But we were telling everybody to buy in November, December, and now there's 10, 50, there was one that had 40 offers the other day. I'm like, I wish people would listen some, like buy in those slow months in November and December when there's not a lot of people are buying.
Yeah.
You can always refinance, and then by December the rates were down to 6.5, better than they are right now. They're over 7.
I remember I was telling you when I was going to buy my first property, you were like, I was looking. This is probably like November. We were talking, and I was like, yeah, I'm looking. Probably go wait for the spring. And you're like, it's like, no, if you can get some, jump on it
now.
And I always remember that.
Right.
And immediately I'm pounding phones. Who's got the off market property?
Right.
And I that worked because I look back on, oh my God, I couldn't imagine that scenario now. But
because going into spring, people all want the spring market. I'm like, spring market is so freaking competitive.
Right. But if you were to tell me the comfortable conversation,
yeah,
and say, oh, that's great,
yeah, it's easy to
need
say.
anything,
okay,
let me know.
Right.
And instead, you gave me that uncomfortable response of like, no, you don't want to wait.
Right.
Let's do it now.
Yeah.
And I recognize that, and I was like the client, even though I wasn't, but you were the person consulting with me.
Sure.
I immediately recognized that, and it prevented a lot of issues that I would have dealt with now. So I would say that's tremendous for you as a sales individual if you're fresh into the business. More times than likely, if you're dealing with a lot of struggles on the back end of transactions, it's because you're not having these uncomfortable or set conversations or setting expectations from the get-go.
It's usually not setting expectations. So even like the NAR lawsuit, you got to get ahead of that and just address it. Like, hey, just want to let you know, this is what's going on. This is buyer agency. This is how we're paid. Like, because I've seen agents still advertising like, oh, buyer agency is free. I'm like, it's not free. The seller pays it. Stop at like, it's not free.
Right.
Somebody's paying it.
Right. Yeah. So and that's my big third one that I'm starting to recognize when I do those things. It's uncomfortable in the beginning, but at least you're gonna be more effective with how you handle transactions, and your conversion rate will definitely go up as you go down the pipeline.
So consistency, persistency, saving money, fortunes in the follow up for you, confidence.
Closing the gap / next steps, and having those uncomfortable conversations. So
setting expectations.
This was more of a sales-oriented, entrepreneurial-oriented episode. So we hope that you got a ton of knowledge from it. There's going to be much more. We could go so many deeper things in sales, and there will be episodes. We'll even bring in some top producer sales professionals to give some third-party insight. So we thank everybody for tuning in on this episode. Lee, close them out.
Yeah. I just say, listen to it, subscribe below. Hopefully we can help you in the future. And consistency, savings, follow up.
Thanks, guys.